They created an artificial moon at one point. Bulma creates a simulation of the moon, but like no title issues, no seasonal changes.
No problems with literally everything that the moon does for us.
It's funny that's
Nothing.
the part of the physics equation that we can't handle, but we can handle the guys like just popping around everywhere. Yeah.
Well, but here's the thing, though.
It's an anime, so
it
works.
This gets to another thing we can talk about is internal logic.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of my favorite subjects.
Violations of internal logic are so frustrating. And what's even more frustrating are people who are like, yeah, but it has talking unicorns, so like you accept that? I'm like, yeah, in the universe of the show I do.
Of the show, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome to the Discomfort Zone. We are the Casual Fanatics. We like to talk about pop culture things. Our other podcast is where we talk about a particular pop culture question that we like to come up with examples for and kind of argue over. This is the podcast where we put ourselves into the discomfort zone. And what this is about is we're trying to expand ourselves. We're trying to take in properties that we wouldn't otherwise take in. And it could be because it's part of a genre we hate. It could be because we just never got around to it. It could be something that we're actually looking forward to. It could be something that we absolutely would rather claw our eyes out than partake in. But whatever it is, we got to look for the good in it. And we get challenged each week by the other members of the podcast. And it's actually sometimes a real blast and sometimes the biggest pain in the butt. But whatever it is, we think we're going to be entertaining for you. I am Paul Stadden. This is Sydnee Johnson. That is Jeremy Brazel.
Hello.
And this week,
I've had it bad for a couple weeks.
I have had it bad for a couple of weeks, which is, I hate to say that because this is all stuff that you, like, we challenge, like, I like the things I've challenged you guys to, for the most part, and I think you like the things that you challenge me to.
I think we all have a really sadistic streak. I'm sorry.
We do. Oh my gosh. I was so mean to Jeremy last week. I gave him It Follows, that the previous episode. Oh, that hurt him. I know.
It hurt because it's something I love, but it's something in the thing that I love that I hate.
Yeah. You love horror, but you hate this movie.
Yes.
This week, I got challenged to The Office. I effing hate The Office. I remember seeing the first episode when it debuted in 2005. It was supposed to be this really good Americanization of this great British sitcom I'd never heard of, and I hated it. And everybody kept telling me over the years, "Oh no, it got better. You have to watch this episode. It's like."
In everyone's defense, it does get a little better after season 2. I didn't challenge him to The Office as a fan.
Right.
I challenged him to The Office as something he hates.
This is fair.
But I know that people like The Office, and I like selected moments of The Office.
And
I like The Office.
I know you like The Office. I know.
I don't love The Office.
I know people who love The Office, and I still don't understand it.
The internet.
Everybody on dating apps loves The Office.
Yes. Why has this become like the de facto?
It's true.
It's like it is the 2000s version of Friends. Like it's that show that I don't
totally
get that everybody loves.
You may have a point.
Yeah,
You actually have a really good point.
Like I hate Friends.
Everybody
I never
I
got
know.
Friends. Loved Seinfeld. Hated Friends. Then it came to The Office, and there were 3 shows that were very similar on at the same time. There was Parks and Rec, 30 Rock, and The Office. I loved Parks and Rec. I watched occasionally 30 Rock, and I hated The Office. So I watched the first episode of The Office years ago when it debuted. And then over the years, people tell me, oh, you got to watch it. So I went back and watched another episode, and I hated it. It was from like season 4. So I tried really hard. Sydnee challenged me to The Office, and I watched the episode she mentioned, which was Drug Test. I watched some of the episodes that were like listed as like the best Office episodes. The Dundee was like the number 1 that I saw. I still don't get it. This is internet. I don't understand the awkwardness. Michael Scott supposed to be a funny character. I can't watch the same joke over and over again, and it's these characters doing the same joke.
It's very repetitive.
Oh, Michael Scott's going to do something dumb? Okay, cool. Rain Scott's character, Dwight Schrute, he's going to be a hard ass about something. Oh, what a shock. Okay, Jim, Pam, there's going to be sexual tension for like 4 seasons. Okay, fantastic.
Yeah, Michael Scott. Well, like you have Michael Scott being awkward, but the thing is like he's trying to get along with the people in the office. Then all of a sudden it backfires on him, and he pretends that he was never that way in the first place.
Oh gosh, I think part of it, I don't like cringy humor, and I loved Parks and Rec because I actually liked the characters. I loved Leslie Knope. I loved Ron Swanson. I loved Andy Dwyer, April Ludgate. I loved these characters, and I loved seeing what they would do. I didn't like anybody in the office. I couldn't stand Michael Scott because I was thinking, like, if I was around him, I would just kill myself. I can't stand Jim because he just slacks off at work, and I can't abide by that. Pam, you have a fiance. What are you doing? Dwight, why do you just immediately try to set everybody against you? I don't understand this. The other characters, whatever your names are, I don't care. I didn't learn them. You did things that were annoying too.
You know more about The Office than I do.
So can I just stop you and say, like, you actually bring up kind of a great point. Because, like, you're a fan of The Office. I'm not really. Right. I like certain moments, only grudgingly. And I challenged you to it because you hate it.
Yes. I know with specifically why.
Fiery passion.
I know.
But you bring up a good point. All of these are, like, sort of social... I don't want to say social awkwardnesses in these characters that, like, it doesn't seem like they do anything to try and mediate. Like, when you're in a group of people, like, naturally, I think most of us try and moderate any social awkwardness that we have that might be grating against those other people. And these are people who are basically locked in a room with each other that they just don't even try. Which, yes, occasionally makes something funny happen, but for the most part, it just seems like, in what universe?
And I think that's the thing. Like, if there were select moments from The Office, like, I really like that moment. Like, that was a funny interaction, or this would be a really funny thing if just left in this vacuum.
That's why the memes work.
And
they work because they're microseconds of it.
Exactly. That's why The Office memes work great. But I'm always looking for, in a show, I'm looking for the character with whom I identify and whom I can see the world through. In Parks and Rec, it was Ron Swanson. I really liked this, weird libertarian kind of roughing it man's man. I also loved Leslie Knope, and she's very politically opposite from me. Mm-hmm. But I loved her.
So compelling.
Because because she cared about the people that she worked with. She had her flaws. Each character was an interesting person trying to be better that had flaws. In The Office, I feel like people are trying to be worse. And I don't want to watch that. Like, I don't want to see somebody actively work. Just everything's being acted on in their own self-interests. Jim. Every interaction Jim has with Pam, he's trying to get her to leave her fiance to be with him. Every interaction Pam has with Jim, she's growing more and more distant from her fiance, whom she should be honest with. Michael Scott is this boss who keeps trying to be friends with the people that he's trying to be the boss of. Dwight actively sabotaging every social interaction he can have and forcing rules that are unenforceable. All these characters doing these things that sabotage their own lives, and I don't want to see that. It's like the difference between Seinfeld and Curb Your Enthusiasm. At least with Seinfeld, there were occasional redeeming qualities to the characters, and you had the incredible writing. And then you have Curb Your Enthusiasm, which is just a cringe fest of look at how dumb Larry David is in this situation. And The Office is that distilled in every single character.
They're all just tropes that never really grow.
They are. There's no character development.
And even when the sexual tension between Pam and Jim is broken, they finally get married. He's still a jerk. Like, he's still going to the bar and ignoring her, and she's at home with the kids, and she's telling him that this is rough.
He knows more about The Office than either of us.
Yeah, a lot more.
And then you replace the character Michael Scott, you replace Steve Carell with Will Ferrell, who comes in and is exactly the same character. All Will Ferrell is just another cringy boss that comes in is trying to be the cool boss with everybody, because Steve Carell and Will Ferrell are two sides of the same coin. And nothing changes. It's the same as the first episode to the very end. The only difference is that Pam realizes what a butthole Jim is. That's it.
I don't disagree.
No, but here's the thing, though. Kind of like with your Simpsons argument that we did in the other episode, it's if you're a fan of that, it's okay.
It's fine.
The lack of growth leaves the structure the same across 9 seasons, or however long. I think it ran for 9 seasons. It was 2005 to 2013.
Strange enough, for how inconsistent The Simpsons is, you do see growth.
You do see growth in the characters.
And you do.
There is a consistent arc, Homer was much more of a jerk and abusive at the beginning than he is later on.
Mm-hmm.
And Lisa's obvious growth with the becoming a vegetarian, staying a vegetarian. So you do have changes in the characters. Mm-hmm. I feel like with The Office, it's just circumstances around the characters change and they stay the same in them. Even when they get what they want, they're still the worst version of themselves. You know, Jim doesn't really work to change. You know, he gets Pam, but he realizes that he's attained what he wanted and that's it. And part of that is the series, I think, realizing that once you give the character what they want, that's it. It's done. You know, and I think that's one of the reasons Steve Carell left is not just because his film career was taking off, but because he was kind of realizing, seeing the writing on the wall. Once you break that, it's a really hard thing to keep going.
Well, it's like the whole show revolves around the monotony that you would find in an office.
Having worked in an office, that's why it hurts so much. Well,
it's a very like I hate to give it a point for anything, but it's strangely metaphorical of what it's supposed to be.
Right.
It's literally people, as you said, just remaining the same, stagnating in this environment that remains the same. And therefore, when you break it to try and like create something that should create growth, it doesn't.
Because the whole point is you're trying to represent what an office
monotony.
Yeah,
that is brilliant. Actually an incredible point. Everybody is stuck in their comfortable rut, and because they're in this office environment and they're in these comfortable lives, they're not willing to push themselves any further than they're already at.
Steve Carell had to leave.
You guys hit, and that's the thing. And you hit the nail on the head. It's that The Office is exactly that. It's every office you've ever been in. The people come and go, but the environment stays the same. It's always the same. And even though you have this new person, it's another archetype. It's another, in your mind anyway, how you're perceiving the people around you. You know, that's annoying Betty from accounting. That's annoying Joe from the front desk. That's whatever.
They're not your friends. They're the people you see every day.
Exactly. And The Office is that. And part of it is I watch TV and movies to escape. I want to get away from the monotony of the everyday. And The Office was on when I was working in an office. I was at the radio station for 10 years, and this show was the one that everybody wouldn't shut up about. I'm like, yes, I know. I live in this environment. I want to watch something else.
It's interesting.
I watch that TV show for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, sometimes more than that.
8 hours. They cut my hours down.
It's interesting to me that, like, despite that, instead of relating to it, you almost recoiled from it.
Oh, yes. Oh, very much so.
So I challenged you to The Office because I was informally challenged to try and like The Office.
Right, right.
I have not been able to get in this show. It's not a genre of shows I like to get into.
Yeah.
I hate to phrase it this way, but because it's not really diehard true, but my capacity for taking in entertainment at this point in my life is very limited. I work a lot. When I'm watching TV, it's usually while I'm also doing work. Like I'm on the couch, like typing and doing things. I'm not looking at the television, or I'm like, I have it on while I'm working on stuff in my house.
So I challenged you to a silent movie.
So yes, it was painful and terrible. I have a very bad idea. So because the way that when I take time to consume media, I like it to be valuable. The Office was a drudge for me as well.
Yeah.
I had a friend try and get me to like The Office. They shall remain nameless for the moment. I might get really mad and talk about it. I don't know.
No,
so anyway,
it's fine.
But they challenged me to watch The Office. I tried to watch it with them at their house. I then went home and tried to watch more of it. And I put it on. It was late at night, thinking, okay, like, I'll put it on while I'm getting ready to go to bed or whatever. Right. And I couldn't.
Yeah.
I couldn't.
Yeah.
And I would turn it off and I would change it to something more interesting, basically. And the person called me the next day and was like, oh, did you see this episode? I'm like, why would I continue? It's the same thing, like on repeat.
Yes.
And like, once I can appreciate the references and the funny moments.
Yes.
I love the meme of Steve Carell just being like, you were a thief of joy, because I feel like so many people need to see that.
His no shout is fantastic.
But at the same time,
why? Because The Office was popular when it first came out, but in the age of memes, The Office is more popular than ever. Do you think that's the reason why, or at least part of the reason why The Office has reached its pinnacle today is how memeable it is.
I think it's...
Oh, absolutely.
It's an incredibly memeable show.
It's a moments show.
Is memeable a real word?
Yes, it is now. I created it.
It's a show that relies, to me, it relies on a lot of moments those 2 seconds, that look. Like, because Jim's faces, like John Krasinski's faces that he would make were great. It was, his faces that he would do in reaction to something, the mugs for the camera, they were the best of any of the three, kind of docu-comedy shows that were out at the same time. But that didn't carry it for me. I needed characters. I needed the Parks and Rec to go see the Leslie Knope and the Tom, whatever Aziz Ansari's character was. I can't remember now. But those characters that were actually likable and interesting.
Yeah.
So that was my challenge for the Discomfort Zone, and it was indeed discomfort. Ugh, squirmed.
I'm sorry.
So hard.
I'm so discomfortable
So discomforting.
right now.
I just feel really guilty now.
No.
Don't feel guilty.
That's what the whole point of this is. And I had to see it. I had to know. Because I had to really give it a shot. I watched like half of a season's worth of episodes, and I realized that, no, I do hate... Sometimes you
hate something.
Sometimes people are like, hey, you got to try this cheesecake. And like, I don't like cheesecake. Well, you haven't had this cheesecake? Like, yeah, I had it 8 times, and it's still horrible.
Oh, my goodness. I've had that so many times happen to me with cheesecake. It's like, I just don't like cheesecake. Have this cheesecake.
You're okay. I will not make you try cheesecake, because it's The Office and cheesecake are the two things.
Challenge.
People, if you don't like cheesecake, people are like, oh, you got to try this cheesecake. You haven't had this cheesecake. You got to come down with me to this restaurant and try this cheesecake. They don't do it with anything else other than The Office and cheesecake. That's it.
I got that pushed on me about Friends as well. So,
well, speaking about something pushed on you,
go on.
This Discomfort Zone for you, you're not necessarily a music person by nature. So this was a hard one for you.
I'm not a technical music person.
Okay, fair enough.
I like listening to music. I love listening to music. I love dancing. I'm a very technical dancer. I'm not a technical music person.
What was your challenge?
So Jeremy challenged me to an album called Anonymous by a band called Tomahawk that I'd never heard of.
And you shouldn't have.
I don't know anything about it. So,
yeah, it's not a commonly known band.
Okay.
It's not.
Yeah.
You go up to a metalhead, and most likely they haven't heard of them.
Even like is the deep cut for metal fans.
You're really scraping the barrel. So I listened to this album, and it was an interesting experience. Interesting is the word I'm going to go with.
So a little background for those who might.
Yeah. Jeremy can probably give it better.
Jeremy can do it better.
All right. So the background of this band, it's a band called Tomahawk, as we discussed. It's the founding member is a man named Mike Patton. Mike Patton is most famous band was Faith No More back in the 80s and early 90s. And I guess they're technically together again at this point.
Epic is the song that you would know if you're going to know any song by Faith No More.
Yeah, or Dirty Job. We Care a Lot, because that was the theme song to Dirty Jobs. Yeah.
Oh.
So
it's the only thing I've heard.
Well, this is one of like the 1,000 Mike Patton side projects that he has. Like Phantomas and Tomahawk being...
Tomahawk, Peeping Tom, which actually I think you might have really liked Peeping Tom.
Take it easy on her. So,
well, no, I'll save that for another time.
Okay. So Anonymous by Tomahawk, why did you have her listen to this?
I had her listen to this because the stylings of Anonymous, it was like, Tomahawk is traditionally more of a metal / hard rock band, but they went through and learned about Native American stylings of music. So they took Native American style music and integrated it into traditional hard rock and metal.
Interesting. Okay. And your reaction to it?
So here's the thing. I'm actually pretty, I wouldn't say a hardcore fan, but like I like hard rock music and I like metal music. Neither of those are things that I hate. And I like experimental music. So I don't know what happened to this album.
Oh my. Oh.
So, and I already shared this with Jeremy a little while ago, but the first song, I just turned it on, listening to it around my house. And the first song, do you remember like when hard rock albums had intros that would last like half the length of a song.
Oh, yeah.
Was just the intro.
It's an instrumental that would, Judas Priest did this a lot.
I mean, some of even my bands that you're not a fan of, like I feel like Guns N' Roses did this a little bit.
Yeah. Black Sabbath
AC/DC did this a little bit.
Everybody did it.
And like, I remember listening to that stuff when I was growing up. The entire first like song, maybe two, felt like that to me.
Oh, just
like
one long.
I wasn't even sure. I'm like, when is it going to start? And it never did.
it had Sun Syndrome.
When is the first song is called Warzone, and I expected that to be really epic. And I'm just like, when does the song start? We got through song 2, and I was like, okay, this is more interesting noises.
I think that's what music is, isn't it? Just interesting noises. Where you're just like, this is
not
cool.
the kind of interesting noises I'm a fan of. I mean, you're not wrong.
I'm not.
The first time I had a little bit of hope for this album was track 3, which was Ghost Dance, which actually is not a bad track. Had a little bit more variation, sounded less like an intro, less like one long couple of chords of part of a song, and actually felt more like a song with a traditional structure. And I feel like that's part of the problem with a lot of their music on this album, is it really lacks song structure. You know way more about that than I do. I know like enough to know when it's not right.
We have each been challenged to music that has weird structure. I challenged him to Death. He challenged me to Bright Eyes. He challenged you to Tomahawk.
Well, I'm a sucker for weird structural music.
But you didn't like Death, though. That's the thing that...
See, the thing is I like songs that flow into each other. It felt like micro songs rather than one song.
Okay,
I'm okay with weird structure, but let me explain what happened next. So Ghost Dance, I started to gain some hope, and then track 4 came on, which is Red Fox, which I know you like.
Oh, I love
which
that
is
song.
Not terrible.
Not a good intro. I know you like this, but
but then track 5 hit. And I just got bored again. Like, I mean, I literally got bored listening to it. I think part of it is that, like, I understand the Native American influence that they're going for, and the sounds are really cool. Like, you want them to make an interesting song.
Right.
And there's, like, not enough to work with. Like, I feel like there was enough to work with for about 3 songs on this album, and the rest of it didn't feel like songs. And the whole album felt to me a lot like the first time I watched Beowulf, which I just spent the whole film waiting for the movie to get better, because I thought, like, I got halfway through and like, it must get better at some point. And
there's Anthony Hopkins.
Anthony Hopkins was there. It has to get decent. I spent $10 on that movie ticket. It never got any better. I should have left in the first 10 minutes. And that's kind of how I ended up feeling about this album, is it just like never got off the ground. Like, it had a couple of moments.
No, I definitely feel where you're coming from there, because actually
I'm
when
glad.
I originally when I listened to this album, I was very disappointed with it, because I got excited. It's like, oh my gosh, they're doing Native American stylings in a metal style. So I was like, cool. I was waiting for it. And then Red Fox was really the only one that hit me right away. And that's mainly because it
starts
the
to have
chorus. The chorus has it switches between 4/4 and 5/4. It has an alternating
that's cool.
time signature thing, which as a drummer, that's something that I'm acutely aware of.
I'm a sucker for that. That's a thing in Stoner Doom a lot these days. A lot of bands like Sleep did that in Dope Smoker. Windhand does that a lot, and they did it in Orchard, where they went back and forth between 4 and 3. I'm a sucker for it. I think it's really cool, but it doesn't really work here.
The shame about it is it doesn't work. And the other thing that is, like, I wanted to like this when you described it to me. I was like, oh, I'm gonna like. He's thinking he's gonna like make me really, suffer for a week. And I really wanted to like it after hearing about it. I'm like, okay, I like strange sounds. I like rock music. I actually know of like a couple of songs, and I can't think of them off the top of my head right now, but I actually know of a couple of songs that have kind of pulled the Native American influence and done it like really, really catchily and well. One of them's like a little bit more on the electronic dance music spectrum, which is way more my thing. Like,
you like that EDM?
I love EDM. But it just didn't, and I was actually really disappointed. That I was like, I was hoping it was going to be good,
right?
But once again, just kind of spent the whole thing waiting for it to start.
Yeah, that is a thing, because they leaned more heavily into the Native American styling than the metal styling. So you have the rhythms and the cadence of Native American music. So it was like they had a more limited note palette, as if I could put it that way, than say a traditional scale.
Yeah, it's like playing Appalachian music where you only have like the pentatonic scale to play with. Whenever you limit yourself that way, you got to be really, really creative with it, or it stagnates so quickly.
And my other problem with it is that, like, I totally understand doing experimental music. I get it. I like a lot of weird stuff that I come across as far as music goes. But the thing is, I think and I don't usually, I've talked to you a little bit about this, I don't usually listen to full albums. Like, I'm not that person. I'm that person who finds like 2 songs and like loves them and hates the rest of the album. That's why iTunes was like revolutionary for me.
Yeah.
That's most people, nothing wrong with that.
I'm an album guy. Like I don't even like.
So
find
you like
best
albums?
I don't like best ofs. I like the whole thing.
You want the story told within it. I'm like, I don't care about this part.
That's fair. I get it.
I'll take this chunk of the story out where my favorite character dies and pretend everything else.
Now I feel about albums.
Because they're out like, Van Halen's For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge. The song on there that's the crowning achievement is the song Right Now, which everybody has heard. Van Halen's Right Now. It's an amazing song. The reason that you haven't heard any of the rest of the songs off the album, because they're not very good. So, but I will not buy a best of Van Halen album that has Right Now. I will pop in for Unlawful Carnal Knowledge. I will listen to Right Now, and then I'll pull the CD back out and put it back in its case.
He's a very dedicated.
I'm dedicated
to
it.
That
I'm
rule.
masochistic a little bit here.
I mean, you have to be.
You're Tool's favorite person.
That's fair.
Except for you're not a major Tool fan.
I kind of like that.
But part of my, what I was going to say about like not listening to whole albums is part of my problem, I think, with this was they didn't really do themselves any favors in that respect.
Yeah.
Like the whole, like I said, the whole first track, which is 3 minutes and 25 seconds long, by the way, sounds like the intro to a metal song.
Yeah. You really need to have like a structure in a song at that length.
You need something.
Even Judas Priest stuck to like a minute and a half for the Hellion, which is a classic intro into
Look, with the
Electric
right intro,
Eye.
I'm fine with it, but
Yeah,
this was not.
That was not the right intro.
It was not. Anyway, go ahead.
Did you make it all the way through the album?
I made it through, I think, basically, yes. I might have like skipped the ends of certain songs because they just got so monotonous. Like,
yeah, it's like I've heard the whole thing. It's
I
not
know
changing.
what it's going to sound like. It's not doing anything. So I think I skipped the ends of a few songs, but I did listen to all of the songs in part.
Okay.
But you know what? It sounded mostly like, and I described this to Jeremy before we started, but like it almost felt like ASMR music. Like it felt like it should be the background for something else.
Yeah.
I'm like, and this is a metal album.
Kind of.
Demand my attention, rock stars of the world. Like,
that surprises me because Mike Patton doesn't make stuff that like sits back,
some of it.
He's pretty forward.
I'm interested. I would be interested in your take on it.
I should listen to it.
Yeah, you should actually listen to it. You'll probably enjoy it more than she did, but I don't think you'll love it.
Yeah.
I don't love the album.
I don't know, though. I mean, I surprised me. There's some things like I'll love one thing I shouldn't like. Like, I love the band Death, and I don't know why. I hate death metal. Like, I hate it. I think most death metal is absolutely trashily done because it's an excuse for people who can't sing and people who don't have good time. But then you get this crowning achievement in the genre of people who are such masters at their instruments and do it so well that I'm like, yeah, I gotta love it. I love the band. And it's like, I shouldn't love.
Is it more on their technical prowess than the music, though?
It probably is, but there are other bands like I don't like Symphony X, like, and they're technical geniuses, and I listen to that and I get bored. Mm-hmm. But there's something about Death that is so gripping. There's sometimes it's like trying to define, like, why does that actor have it? Why do you like them?
Yeah, and that's hard.
And you try
that's a hard thing to do.
Put it into
reason
words.
Why we call things It Factor, X Factor, things like that.
Exactly.
Things we don't quite understand but know are there.
And I think it's honestly probably more difficult to do in music because you can chalk it up in people. You can say, oh, like it's charisma or whatever. Music is it's a strange animal.
Especially because there's so many micro niches,
There's like in sports as well, there's athletes that have this X factor that can change the flow of a game, but they're not the fastest person on the field, they're not the strongest person on the field, they're not the tallest person on the field, yet they're the ones that change things.
There's something to them that can grip people. I think about why is it that I love certain things? Like, I hate AC/DC. I can't stand that band.
We were talking about that.
But then I hear It's a Long Way to the Top if you want to rock and roll, and I adore that song. There's something about it.
That's their song that you picked.
I don't know why.
That breaks my heart a little bit. They've got way better songs.
Can't stand the Brian Johnson
I love
era.
that song.
I like it, but they've got better songs.
But the first time I heard that song, I'm like, what is this awesomeness? This is AC/DC? This is what they can sound like? And I don't know why. And it's not the bagpipes or some gimmick. There's something about the way they did that song, the writing, the interaction between Bon Scott's vocals and the guitars. There's something about that song that I just love.
I've never heard you admit that.
And if it comes on the radio, I will absolutely listen to it beginning to end. But I can't stand AC/DC. Every one of us has that one thing. So
you'll buy that whole album just to listen to that one song.
I seriously, every time I go to the mall, I'm like, I need to go to FYE and I need to buy, I think it's on Power Age. I think I need to buy that album. Because I don't like the band.
I'll get it for you for Christmas.
But I'll listen. Oh, good. Oh, thank you.
That way you won't have to go, give them your money.
Give them money. I don't mind giving them money. They have a lot of it.
Damn it.
I still buy CDs.
So,
all right.
I feel like in our discomfort zones, we're changing levels here. You went like, I hate,
yeah,
to
a hard meh.
Oh yeah,
the
challenge you had.
Adored my challenge.
I am so glad I got the challenge because I thought you knew about. Like, I didn't even think of course Jeremy knows about this. So I challenged you. You want to tell them?
I was challenged to the max.
Not. We don't mean that. Like, his challenge was the max.
The max.
It might have been
literally.
It was
the max.
MAXX, the great comic / TV series.
You go ahead and explain a little bit because I don't know as much about the background as you do.
When I was a kid, I was looking for comic books that I actually would find interesting because I didn't like the standard superhero stuff. I watched the X-Men on TV, but I wanted something that was weirder. I liked bleak dystopic stuff ever since I was a little kid. Like, my mom, when I was a little kid, like, one of the few things that I would watch, like, I would watch Star Wars, I would watch Indiana Jones, but it was Blade Runner was one of the things that as a kid I just loved.
This is why we're friends. I've been wondering, but that just answered the question.
That's an interesting thing to love as a kid.
That's a really interesting thing to love as a kid.
Oh, but Blade Runner, I would, and the whole Roy Batty scene, lost like tears in the rain. I
love that scene.
There was such poetry in what he was saying. So I loved
one of the best ad-lib moments ever.
So I was looking for things like that in comics because they're all very colorful and bright.
And there's not a lot. I'm a dystopia fan too, and there's not.
And thankfully,
a ton.
The indie comic scene is coming along, especially in the last 20 years. Mm-hmm. But when I was a kid, Image Comics had just debuted, and I remember seeing Image Comics #1, and it had 3 different comics in it. One was Blood Wolf, which was created by Rob Liefeld. It was a weird thing where he had his motorcycle was a gun. It's a whole weird thing. I can't even remember what the other one was. Oh, the other one might have been Spawn. But the third comic in there was The Maxx. And it was so strange. It was so bizarre and otherworldly. And it dealt with mental illness and what is a superhero. And the Maxx isn't even an anti-hero. He just almost doesn't even matter in his own comic book. And you don't know what's real, what is his fantasy. And then he got his own full-fledged comic, and I was absorbed. I loved the Maxx. And then MTV picked it up. They did a series. They had this.
What you challenged me to is the TV show.
I challenged you to the TV show because it's easier to absorb than going back to all the comics.
Right.
And the TV show is maybe the best adaptation of a comic thing I have ever seen, the most faithful I've ever seen. It's it's phenomenal, and I want to hear what you thought about it.
So it's awesome to hear that it was like incredibly faithful to the comic. This might be a comic I would actually pick up
real quick.
Yeah.
So, on what basis did you challenge Jeremy? Like, what is your hatred that?
It was ignorance because the whole thing was he'd never heard of it.
He'd never heard of it. Okay.
Never heard of it.
I was shocked by.
I'm not a comic book fan.
Okay.
For one. So to challenge me to something that is very like the medium is comic book. Even the TV show was stylized like a comic book.
Literally, it's frame for frame the comic book.
Yeah, except for you have motion to it.
It's motion. Yeah.
Like, in between each frame, you have an added motion to get to there, unless you have the actual frame side by side, and they're going at the same time. It is a very wild way that they chose to animate this thing, and all I gotta say is I clearly see where Robert Rodriguez got his inspiration for Sin City.
Yeah.
How he shot Sin City was basically the Maxx, except for in black and white.
He had to have watched that TV
series.
Oh,
no, without a doubt. From the voiceovers that you hear in as the episode goes along, typically from the Maxx, or the villain character. The villain,
Gone.
Yeah, Mr. Gone.
Perfect casting for the voices, by the way.
Oh gosh, no, the voices were fantastic. So I get into this crazy story that, like, I'm watching is like, I'm thinking, okay, I'm about to have this crazy action sequence where the Maxx just tears apart this person and stuff like that, and it's like all of a sudden the police show up and break it up. They arrest the Maxx. And they're like, you said there was a woman there. I didn't see a woman there, because he was supposed to be trying to rescue this woman. And it's like, what? What just happened? And it immediately, bam, I was dragged in. So from there, like, all of a sudden we go into this near dream sequence where he starts talking about his origins, where he came from. Now we're down in this surrealist Australia, where we have weird looking creatures, and it's like, is this story he's telling right now real? And it's like, you can't really tell, because everything else is realistic, and this world is gritty, and the city is, the technology is of the time, and there's nothing off about it except for him. So you hear the story about the Outback, and is like, is that real? So you later learn there's, like, really only one character who cares that he even exists, and that's his social worker. And you learn about the social worker, and it's like, you realize, oh, goodness, this character is not in a good place. The Maxx is not in a good place at all. He's this lonely person who has delusions of grandeur, of being a superhero, a person who can rescue others. And as the story just keeps building and building and building upon itself, you learn more about the Australia and where he comes from, and how he got to where he came from, all the way to where he is now. And all those little interesting tidbits just keep you intrigued the entire time.
Because they leave, I think Sam Keith, the creator, left enough room for you to question whether it was real or not. That, was it an alternate universe that he was able to slip back and forth between? Was Mr. Gone, the villain, aware of the other universe, and was he also present there? There's a lot that gets explored, and it deals a lot with how real mental illness is to the person who is mentally ill, and really questions a lot about how you deal with them, because the Maxx really does try to be a hero.
Mm-hmm. He wants to be a good guy.
And he has the capability, he has the physical strength to be able to do so, and finds himself in situations where he can, because he does have superhero strength.
But the typical situation he ends up in is people looking at him like he's crazy for doing the things he's doing and dressing up in a costume. Yeah. Like that guy in blue and yellow or whatever, Yeah,
and he lives in a cardboard box and talks about cheaters a lot. It's such surrealism done right, because it deals with how we view surrealism, how we deal with looking at a non sequitur and trying to make sense out of it. And maybe there is no sense that can be made from it, but you have to be able to confront that first. And I think that the Maxx did that better than any comic that has come before or since. It is the best of the weird, mentally ill, dystopic kind of comics that's an exploration of that. And I think anything that came after that was a pale imitation.
And that's really early for its time, I feel like. That's a
early
lot
90s.
of really hard-hitting topics for the early 90s. Like,
Yeah, it's...
I'm a little sad I've never heard of this before now.
It came on the heels of the recession of the early 90s, and it deals with homelessness. It's really a fascinating view into kind of the people who are hardest hit by the recession of the early 90s.
Yeah, you have that, and then you have the mental illness aspect, and then you have the psychological aspect that, is it real or not? That modern horror is really only playing with today. Mm-hmm. It's like 90s horror was like cheesy. I'm making fun of the genre horror. You had Scream during the 90s, which is like deliberately making fun of it.
It's a deliberate parody of the horror genre, yeah.
No.
Yeah, but you have this comic here that is hitting on topics that other things is like, we just got a video game that had a realistic depiction of schizophrenia just a couple years back in Senua's Sacrifice, Hellblade.
Okay.
And where's like, oh, this is so innovative, and then to go back to see the Maxx already dealing stuff with like that, it was like, this was well before its time.
Well,
it was super heavy.
And also, I'll say, just from what you guys are describing, it seems like it's a really interesting commentary also on how do modern people in the public perceive something outside of the ordinary, something trying to be heroic.
Right.
We talked about The Boys a little bit off camera a few weeks ago, and I think that's a really interesting look at the psychological side of people viewing that kind of superhuman behavior.
Yeah.
And I think this is a really different take on it, but also kind of a cool one. How do people deal with things that are outside of the ordinary?
Right.
Because I don't think as modern humans, like, we do that very well, honestly.
No, we don't. Do you guys remember the whole thing with the House of Horrors in Cleveland where this guy had kidnapped these women? Mm-hmm. And do you remember the guy who was responsible for really rescuing them? This weird dude who did all these interviews, and he was just this strange, colorful character. And when I saw him, the first thing I thought of was the Maxx. Mm-hmm. Because you have somebody who is clearly, he has his own set of issues. And people talk about, this is the kind of person that most people will walk by a situation and think, no, it's actually fine. I'm sure that this is handled. I don't want to deal with it. Any one of the excuses that we make, but it takes somebody who's a little bit strange to actually like, no, I'm going to go in and be the hero. And he was. And that's kind of the situation. And that's like the entire series of the Maxx is you have this guy who continually wants to try to be the hero. And is he insane or not? And then you get to the question of, does that even matter for him to be a hero? Or is it necessary for him to be a hero? Do heroes, by their definition, have to be a little bit off and a little bit weird? I mean, we idolize these guys who wear underwear on the outside of their outfits and fly around solving crimes. And don't you have to be a little bit strange to do that? And that's the whole commentary that the Maxx was.
And the other part of the commentary, interestingly, is these are things that actually usually will get you arrested.
Yes.
Like the things that we view as heroic in movies, comics, TV, media, all the things we talk about. Like, if you did these things in real life, you're obstructing justice.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
it's like the gritty
stop.
Nolan Batman dealing with that subject, and we thinking, oh, that's innovative at the time.
I mean, the police did not like the Maxx. They were not fans.
They did not.
They weren't exactly fans of Batman either, and I'll take that. At least it's a little more realistic.
It is, but the thing about the Maxx is a little bit more nihilistic than Batman, because they didn't like Batman, but they just didn't even consider the Maxx.
Yeah.
He just didn't exist to them. He was a nuisance more than anything.
Right.
Which it's very Man of La Mancha kind of thing of him fighting the windmills, you know.
Mm-hmm. I love it.
This is why I challenge this to you, because anytime somebody says that they don't know the Maxx, like, you have to see the Maxx. Okay, it's a little bit like cheesecake for me. Okay, this is my cheesecake.
This is your office.
Cheesecake.
This is the office. Is the Maxx. You have to know about the Maxx. So that's the thing that I love about the discomfort zone. It's not necessarily you're getting challenged to something you hate. It's getting challenged to something that you don't know. It is outside of your comfort zone. It was a comic. That's not a thing that you ever would have done. You know? So that's the thing about this that I think really is a lot of fun.
I want to watch this now.
Well, I have the DVD. I'll lend it to you. So I'm actually really excited for next week's Discomfort Zone because it's going to be an all video game week.
And I feel like next week we're all going to like the stuff that we played.
I don't know.
I think so.
I don't know. We'll see.
I think you'll appreciate it. So here's what we're getting challenged to for the Discomfort Zone for next week. I'm not an RPG fan, but I'm getting challenged to one that I'm actually really excited to play called Undertale. Now, which one of you challenged me? Was that
it was Jeremy. He beat me to you on the RPG.
Okay. So, Jeremy, why do I need to play Undertale? Why is this going to take me out of my comfort zone, and why is that a good thing?
Okay. Undertale is an RPG. Undertale is the heart of it is its story. Is not an action-packed game. In fact, there's multiple ways to play through the game. It's not just... It's like, if you want to be the killer, you can be the killer. But you don't have to kill anything in this game. You can do what's called the pacifist run. Yeah. And then you have different endings and different ways the story plays out, depending on the way you played it and previous playthroughs.
The amazing thing about the game is that it knows what you did in previous playthroughs. And you can even delete the game. And like if you killed bosses in your previous playthrough, it will know. And you try to go through a pacifist run, it'll be like, oh, well, now you're trying to not kill anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, Undertale is a fascinating game. One of my favorite channels on YouTube is Outside Xbox. And I swear, like every third video they make references Undertale in some way. So when you mentioned that you're challenging me to Undertale, I've been meaning to play this. It's been the one RPG, and there's some bullet hell stuff in it later in the game where there's some bosses that you go up against where they're just throwing stuff at you. And that's the other discomfort part for me is I'm just like, I'm a little antsy about the bullet hell stuff. But the characterization, it's all 8-bit graphics. There's no dialogue. It's all on-screen text with like little Nintendo 64 Banjo-Kazooie grunty sounds. It's going to be tough, but I think it's worth it because it is a piece of art. People talk about whether games can be art. This is art.
Yeah. Toby Fox, he's the creator of the game. The first thing he did was actually a mod to Earthbound, which is a Super Nintendo RPG.
I can see this.
One of my favorite games of all time. So when I heard that was his first thing, he loved Earthbound that much, and he was using this to create a spiritual successor to Earthbound. So I was like, I am 100% on board. And then not only does he make art with the story that he tells, creates solid gameplay, but the music. He is a fantastic composer, particularly at the 8-bit. Like he's been recognized for his music so much that he was brought on board to do music for Game Freak, which is the creators of Pokemon. So he did the entire soundtrack for the game Town, and then made one of the tracks for the most recent Pokemon, the best track in the game, by the way. So
yeah, I'm not shocked at all. I'm actually I'm looking forward to this, and I'm also trepidatious because I know it's going to be tough, but I know it's going to be worth it. Like great art is. Jeremy, I challenged you right back with a classic.
You challenged me to the game Myst.
I'm so looking forward to this. Now, this is going to be a controversial one because part of the discomfort zone is we're challenging each other to things that are generally considered great. They're just outside of our comfort zone. Myst is a divisive one because there are people who will not call Myst great. I think that Myst is, not only was it at the time the highest selling game, well, at least a CD-ROM game of all time, and helped spawn this whole genre of adventure and really solidified the CD-ROM as a thing that you could use for gaming. But yes, some of the puzzles are interminably difficult. And some of them are ones that you really can't solve without either a lot of trial and error or with a walkthrough. But it's a fascinating game. It's a fascinating world that's been built, and I love Myst.
When you have so many things that are inspired by Myst out there.
Yeah.
It's like Bob Dylan. I'm not a huge fan of Bob Dylan.
Right.
It's a lot of influence.
But he influenced people like Jimi Hendrix, Pink Floyd, and the likes.
Everybody.
The Rolling Stones.
His clones, Tom Petty and Bruce Springsteen.
Exactly. So, the idea of being able to play Myst, and one of my favorite, more modern indie games was a game called The Witness.
Okay.
The Witness was inspired by the Myst and it's a puzzle game and adventure game, but the puzzles is you essentially have to draw lines and you have to use the environment to see how the lines are supposed to be drawn.
Interesting.
It's like a beautiful landscape, abandoned island that you're on, just like Myst.
Just like Myst.
And I feel like we learned in an earlier conversation that you're not a huge fan of puzzle games either.
I'm not.
This
but
is gonna
more like
stretch it,
action, like the Tetris
It's
style.
really not
Yeah.
any in Myst.
There's nothing in Myst. You can't die. You just, well, kind of, I guess. But no, and the thing is, don't cheat and get the, whatever the later one was, like real Myst or whatever they called it, where you could actually like walk around in real time. You got to get the one where you click and a frame moves. That's the one you got to play. The real Myst.
Jeremy's regretting this already.
I played Myst. My first experience with Myst was on the Atari Jaguar CD. And I had to use the Atari Jaguar controller to move around. So you can use a mouse.
I said, I think we'll all enjoy our choices this week. I might have been wrong.
It's
going to hurt
It's rough.
Sydnee a little bit too, I think. Because Sydnee got challenged to a little classic
called Half-Life.
Half-Life.
What possessed you?
I adore Half-Life. It is one of the few games where I have played through beginning to end multiple times.
He shocks me all the time with the things he adores.
I know.
Why?
I know. I don't know what it is, and people have called it a lot of things. Like they hate the Zen levels at the end. I love the Zen levels at the end. People say, "Oh, it's a first-person crawl through the docks." I don't care. It's a blast. I love this game. The atmosphere it sets up. It was in 1998 such a leap forward for gaming. I
remember when it came out.
I hear the pain. I know, but it was written by a horror writer. The plot was. It was one of the few games where it had scripted elements, but you could still control your character.
Not worth it.
It was a linear, incredible game. There was no level.
That's the biggest innovation that it had. Is it like basically it created the foundation of every modern one-player or co-op shooter out there, whether first person or third person, because you're not. When you complete a quote-unquote level, you're continuing the story in a seamless manner. Mm-hmm. So instead of going back to a new screen where you choose the next level or choose to play the first level again, you're playing one continuous story.
Yeah. It's not like Doom where you get to the end and there's an exit and then it tells you your stats for the level and then you go to the next one and people have speed runs of the different levels.
So funny to think of video games like that now.
It is.
Sorry.
It's funny. People don't remember, like...
I remember. It's just weird.
Wolfenstein 3D had lives. Like...
Yep.
Why? And that was just... There were so many conventions that we don't think of that were thrown away. And Half-Life, more than Doom, threw away everything that we had come to expect out of, especially a shooter, because id Software said... We don't need story. I think it was John Carmack who said that story in an id Software game is like a plot in a porno.
I can't curse, but you can say that.
It's a quote. It's a direct, and you can curse. I'm just going to bleep it with chocobo noises. But Half-Life proved that you can do plot, and I think a lot about what is the first game that you can really consider art from top to bottom, not just design, but story, structure, everything. What is the first game? And Half-Life maybe not, because you have games that came earlier like Final Fantasy VII, which are really, that would be art, which was 1997. You had some games that were really considered, but I think in terms of horror and what the game did for the industry, Half-Life is among the first batch of games I would really consider actual art.
Don't
you
worry.
You guys are just going to keep challenging me to shooters and horror games
Pretty much.
Combined.
Yeah.
Like, every time it's a game, it's a horror shooter.
History. It's
Don't worry.
History.
It's not like BioShock horror. And it's not really truly like... It has scariness to it, but it's more action than horror.
Yeah, it's not really... There's nothing scary like BioShock...
You just have head crab zombies.
Yeah, BioShock feels... BioShock feels claustrophobic at times. And that's the real horror of BioShock.
The ambiance is the true horror of BioShock.
It really is. And while Half-Life is a horror game, I mean, you are going through, it's a building, and then you're out in the desert. And yeah, there are things that will surprise you in terms of like that enemies coming out of nowhere. But I don't think you could really get true horror until the graphics got good enough, until you got to BioShock, I mean, like 2005, 2007.
It's true. It's a little hard to like jump at something in 16 or 32-bit. Like,
yeah, I think unless it's drawings, like you could kind of get away with it in like stuff that was well drawn, and they did a good job with Silent Hill. You know, the very first Silent Hill on the PlayStation was actually pretty good and horrifying.
I feel like it's one of the scariest games to this day.
Old horror games like that it'd be funny to see if they age as bad as some horror movies.
They do. You play the first.
Some of them do.
Play Alone in the Dark. Okay.
Oh gosh, that game's terrible.
The first Alone in the Dark. It was great for that. I'm not one of these people that's like a historical presentist that just says, "Oh, everything that came before is lame and everything's great now."
No,
but it did age badly. I love Alone in the Dark, but it's a blocky mess.
It's cheesy now.
And the first Resident Evil, like you're not going to get scared by the first Resident Evil, but the remake that came out on the GameCube,
new one, yeah, no, it's.
Oh, and I've been playing Resident Evil 2.
Oh,
holy crap, that is terrifying.
You have fun with that, like I will.
I'm not gonna make you play that.
Speaking of Resident Evil 2 remake, I saw an amazing mod of Resident Evil 2 remake.
Yeah,
where whenever Mr. X shows up, the music, X gonna give it to you, starts playing.
It kind of undercuts the horror.
It's amazing.
Yeah, no.
Oh gosh, it makes you terrified of that song.
You're developing a stress reaction.
Yeah.
What would be great is if the music would like be in the distance, like as he gets closer, like. What?
That would be even better. If they
like if
done
the
that way.
music followed him.
That would be way better.
So, but here's the Half-Life inspired all of this.
Okay. All the things that I don't play.
There's a reason that Resident Evil doesn't do. I mean, aside from the technical. We've gotten away from the technical limitations of having to have an isometric view or the character walking around in a static room and then having a door animation. We've gotten beyond those things because of technical limitations, but also like Half-Life, it just set the template for what a first-person shooter and what a horror game really could and should be. So that's why I'm challenging you, because it is truly great.
I will try and keep an open mind.
Do your best. Hey,
as I examine the two things that
you'll do better with this
Go on.
than BioShock.
You will.
I actually loved BioShock. I hate it, but I love it.
Well, no, I understand.
I really want to love that game.
I think you'll fall in love with Half-Life, and you'll be able to play it because it's not scaring you out of your mind every 10 minutes.
I really wish I would have filmed myself playing BioShock.
Now, there are a couple of things. How do you feel about games that steal your weapons?
It's not allowed.
It happens twice.
Okay, twice I can deal with it. If it happens all the time, I feel like that's not fair.
No. It's not like oh gosh, have you ever played Trespass?
If I'm unarmed for story purposes, I'm fine with it.
Yes,
but like, don't take my weapon on a regular basis.
No, you accept it. You accept it totally in the game.
Okay.
But it happens twice, and it is absolutely worth it. So those are our Discomfort Zone challenges. These are going to hurt a little bit, but we think it's worth it. Great art is worth some suffering. And we hope that you agree and that you enjoy. And don't forget to push yourself out of your own comfort zone every now and again. Do something, go absorb something that is truly great that you don't necessarily think you're going to like, because sometimes you'll be surprised. I think we have with a lot of the Discomfort Zone stuff. So until next time, we are the Casual Fanatics. I am Paul Stadden, Sydnee Johnson, Jeremy Brazel. Bye.
Toodaloo.